Why does one go for bike rides?
All the to-do about TPU. Today, let's take a look at dealing with tubes and their puncture resistance. Let's talk about tubeless first of all. The primary significant aspect of tubeless is its puncture resistance, or that's not quite accurate, its ability to self-heal after being punctured. This aspect significantly reduces one's time spent fixing repairs and punctures. The other aspect is weight. Tubeless tires are significantly lighter than tube tires because there's no tube. However, now that TPU tubes have come on the scene, they have made a significant difference in terms of our consideration of using tube versus tubeless. At least in my opinion, that should be the case. Tubeless tires are generally very reliable. This is one of the significant benefits. And the reason they're reliable is because the sealant inside will self-heal any puncture that occurs while you're riding. Okay, that's really cool. A really big benefit. There are a lot of downsides to tubeless tires. The benefits for a lot of folks outweigh the downsides, but the list is much longer. Winterizing. Let's take a look at the first downside of a tubeless tire. When you winterize your bike, if you live in a very cold climate where you're not riding your bike during the wintertime, you're going to have to put it away, which means the tires are not turning or spinning, which means that the sealant will puddle in the lower part of the tire and harden, or at least there's a very good chance of that happening. It's an expected outcome. If and when that happens and your sealant puddles down at the bottom part of the tire, hardens up, when you take the bike out to ride it in the summertime, when it starts spinning, it'll have a heavy spot, and your tire will dunk, 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 dunk as you ride along, because that heavy spot is causing an out of balance condition for the tire. So to winterize a tubeless tire, you have to take the tire off, clean it out, clean all the sealant out, and this is not a clean proposition. Removing and installing sealant is messy. Once it's clean and all the sealant's out, your tire is winterized. Then in the summer, when you're ready to ride again, you have to put the tire back on, put more sealant in, again, a fairly messy proposition, get the bead to hold, to catch, and then pump the tire up. Now that doesn't sound too bad, and once you get in practice doing it, I grant it's not that bad, but the point is it's additional maintenance that happens regularly, maintenance that doesn't exist with the tubed tire. Of course, a lot of folks they can't be, and I don't blame them, bothered with the extra maintenance, so they just take the tire into the shop and let their local bike shop winterize their tires or prepare them for summer use. A perfectly reasonable approach, but that does add to the cost of a tubeless tire. You don't choose tubeless tires due to cost benefit. They are more expensive any way you look at it. As you ride a tubeless tire, as it gets holes in it, sealant will come out. Another downside of tubeless tires, as the sealant comes out doing its job, and eventually you have to put new sealant or more additional sealant in. So if you're riding hard, you're going to be fairly regularly, it's hard to say what regularly means in this context, but you're going to be fairly regularly putting new sealant into the tire. Also, over time, sealant can lose its effectiveness. The hole can be too big and just squirt all the sealant out. Now you have a new problem. Weight of the tubeless tire. You can't just say, I've eliminated this weight by going tubeless, because you haven't quite eliminated all this weight because you've replaced it with an amount of sealant which has some amount of weight. The downsides begin to shrink the benefits ratio. If you have a tear in the sidewall of the tire, you're done. You can't just sew it up and expect the sealant to self-heal that tear in the sidewall. You have to do something else. We talked about the other major aspect, which is putting a new tire on. Most people have their shop do it. Doing it yourself is just fine, but it can be really messy. It's not necessarily easy. Sometimes the tire bead doesn't take hold and you got to work at it and work at it and work at it. It's not a simple proposition, unlike putting a new tube into your tire. The other aspect of tubeless, which most people don't talk about, is all the extra additional tools you have to take. If you're just using tubes in your tire, you have a spare tube, you have your tire irons, your pump, and your pressure gauge, which may be built into your pump. That's it. That's all. Oh, and patches. And patches, okay. And that's pretty much all you have to take to be able to effect a repair on the road or an outright installation of a new tube. With tubeless, you have to take all of those things, plus bacon strips, bacon strip tool, more sealant. You may need additional types of patches. There are patches you can get to go on the inside of the carcass of the tire, and carbon dioxide, and a carbon dioxide pump. You still have to take a spare tube. So when we look at the downsides of tubeless compared to the benefits of tubeless, you want those benefits for you and your style of riding. Those benefits need to be pretty significant because the downsides of tubeless are also fairly significant. And the weight advantage is to a significant degree lost, and I would contend completely lost nowadays with TPU tubes. It would appear that tubeless is not necessarily all it's cracked up to be in terms of the end-all solution for weight as well as repair, maintenance. It is really nice when you're riding down the trail, you get a puncture, and the sealant immediately takes effect, and you just keep riding. You don't even have to stop. That's really sweet. So let's talk about the topic that no one seems to be talking about, which, in my mind, this one item, along with TPU tubes, eliminates any benefit that can be conceived of with tubeless tires. And that is tires that themselves are puncture resistant. Continental Protection Cross Kings, and I use the Specialized Fast Track Armadillo. I will say this, over 1,000 miles on this same model of tire, I have gotten one puncture. So what's the benefit to me of a tubeless tire and all of the maintenance and the weight and the extra tools I have to take? Nope, no benefit whatsoever. All of that benefit is completely and entirely lost when I consider that I can put a lightweight TPU tube in, that's what I've got in here now, and significant and very effective puncture resistant. I ride 2-track, I ride very rough single track. I've ridden on pavement, on shoulders that are rife with bottle. I've ridden through patches of nothing but bottle shards and scared me to death. Didn't have a problem. Now, when I look at my tire, I can see all kinds of cuts and places where those broken bottle fields on the shoulder of the road probably cut right into the tire. The composition of the layers inside is such that it didn't get a puncture. Didn't bother the TPU one bit. The only time I did get a puncture was a construction staple just in the wrong orientation on the road, and it went whoosh, right straight into, there's no tube that's going to withstand that. Nothing. Sealant might have, but it was a pretty big hole. It was a TPU tube. I patched it with a TPU patch, and I continued riding that tire for another couple hundred miles with no problems whatsoever, no leakage, no difference. That aspect, a puncture-resistant tire, which no one seems to consider, along with TPU tubes, their weight reduction and space-saving characteristics completely outweigh any and all benefits, for me, of tubeless tires. Let's talk about tube tires. We have butyl rubber. There's latex. I've never used latex. They're lighter. They have downsides. They have upsides. They're more expensive. No benefit. I'm not a racer. In fact, I'm an anti-racer because of the speed I tend to go. I might win a backward race. Maybe a standstill race. So latex is not something that has benefits for me, and I switched from butyl rubber to TPU primarily and solely for the weight savings and space savings characteristics. If we look at the butyl rubber tubes, their weight is significant. The amount of space they take up is significant. These 4 tubes are 29er 2.1 inch. Now let's compare that with 4 TPU tubes. So we have 4 butyl rubbers, 4 TPUs, 1 in each tire, and 2 spares. Now when I was using butyl, I only carried 1 spare, just because of the space. 1 butyl rubber tire is still bigger than 2 TPU inner tubes. And the weight is significantly more. Let's go back to latex for a moment. The benefits of latex are its lighter weight. That's really its only benefit. Its downsides are it loses air faster. You're gonna need to basically check your pressure and probably top it off before every ride. All right, butyl rubber tubes, let's take a look at their benefits. Relatively cheap, $8 a piece for these. They're readily available. Every tire shop has them. You can get them off Amazon, anywhere else. And you can run butyl tubes no matter what. If you normally use latex or TPU or tubeless, you can still run butyl tubes in them if you need to. They're easy. They don't require any special handling, nothing special to install them, of course, other than the standard tools. The downsides of butyl tubes is their weight. They also, the rubber will deteriorate over time, but we're talking years. Let's take a look at TPUs now and compare their benefits and costs. They don't weigh very much at all. I have TPU tubes here. This is the Ride Now off of AliExpress. And this one only weighs 56 grams compared to this one from Banked, which is 70 grams. 14 grams of difference. This one the Ride Now uses a resin stem, and the Banked uses a steel stem. Now this particular Banked is a Presta valve. This is the 56 gram mountain bike 29er 2.1 inch. It goes from 1.9 to 2.5 inches. This is a Presta valve. Presta valves have the longer stems, but they all the effort tends to be lightweight. And so they tend to be that resin stem, which I'm not a fan of, because when you're riding in the mountains and a stick or something catches or even just bops that stem, if that happens, and it can happen, this resin valve will just break in half. And there's no way to replace it. Now you gotta, your tube's done for. Whereas a steel stem, obviously is going to take a lot more abuse and hang in there just fine. So I went to the steel stems, so they're a little bit heavier. And now I have the Banked with steel stem with Schrader valve. And I am tickled pink. These are a little bit heavier at 75 grams. And the reason is, you'll notice that the Presta valve is a little smaller diameter than the Schrader valve. TPU tubes are available in long, medium, and short. Presta valve stem lengths with plastic stems, which makes them the lightest weight at 56 grams a piece. We're talking mountain bike. If you're using road bike tires, that are much smaller diameters, 28s, 25s, whatever, the weight's even less. We're talking 24 to 26 grams per inner tube. Cost. Most people are turned off from TPU because of the cost. The non-AliExpress TPU tubes will run you $25 to $40 a piece. Are they any different? You can get different thicknesses of material, which would certainly make them more puncture resistant, more reliable. But if you're using a puncture resistant tire, I can't see the benefit there at all. And of course, thicker material is going to make the tube heavier. All of these tubes that I have, which I purchased off AliExpress, run anywhere from $6 to $8 each. Same price range as a butyl tube. They work fine. I've had no problems with any of them. The other downside of a TPU tube is that they are slightly more finicky to install. And by slightly, I mean slightly to install than a TPU tube. TPU tube, you just, stick it in there. You've got the stem poking out the stem hole of your rim here. Pump it up, you're done. Put the tire back on. With TPU, most of the instructions are that wherever the seam is on the TPU tube needs to go forward in terms of the rolling direction of the tube. Put the stem in, inflate it ever so slightly so the tube kind of has just enough air to kind of hold itself up into a donut shape. Do not overpressurize it. meaning don't put any more than that in it. It should not be firm to the touch. You put it into the tire, onto the rim. You put your tire on, and then you must squeeze all the way around, massage it to make sure that the TPU tube is not crimped inside by the tire or twisted anywhere around it. I've put on quite a few TPU tubes. I've never had any problems as long as I followed those relatively simple instructions. It only takes a few seconds more to do that, and pump her up, you're good to go. The upsides of TPU tubes, they're so small to pack. I carry 2 of them now in my toolkit. The weight advantage is significant. They're easy to repair. You can get TPU patch kits to get additional patches. The way TPU patches work is this patch kit. I certainly recommend a patch kit. You have alcohol cleaning wipes. The one time I had to patch a TPU tube was in the rain at the side of the road. I took my alcohol, you rub the spot, you got to find the spot. It's harder to find a hole in a TPU tube because a TPU tube does not tear or rent. It's just a pinprick is all the hole is. So it took me a while to find the hole. Anyway, I found the hole, cleaned it thoroughly with the alcohol, took one of these little tiny patches, which are essentially just like, very similar to the Park Tools GP2 patches. And you put it on there, put it back in, just like you're installing it, blow it up, and you're good to go. No difference in a practical, real sense between patching a TPU tube and patching a butyl tube. It's the same process using the self-adhesive patches. I have read that some folks have even used the GP2s on TPU tubes with perfect results, no problems. Another upside to TPU tubes is that they are readily recyclable, unlike butyl rubber, which is not recyclable, and certainly they are very reliable. TPU tubes, significant space advantage, significant weight advantage, no additional tools other than what you would normally carry for a butyl tube, and with a puncture-resistant tire, you will have very, very low maintenance, equal to, if not better than, butyl rubber tubes. Butyl rubber, weight. That's their big downside. And the space that it takes to store butyl rubber tube. Tubeless, if you're willing to accept all the downsides, the sealant mess, the weight of the extra tools that are required for a tubeless tire, including, remember, you still got to take a tube with you, and I would take a TPU tube, then tubeless is the right answer for you. For me, TPU is the clear winner. The sound of a TPU tube, it's kind of pingy compared to butyl rubber, which has a deader sound. Personally, my experience is the compound and build of the tire, Carcass, is far more relevant to the reliability and puncture resistance of your tire than the tube itself is. If you're not running a puncture-resistant tire, then you're going to have punctures fairly frequently, regardless of whether you're using TPU or butyl. So I'm getting rid of all my butyl rubber tubes. I don't want to use butyl anymore. I have no interest in it, primarily because of the weight and space savings. Needless to say, I am a happy TPU tube convert. In my mountain bike tubes with a Schrader valve, regular standard short 48 millimeter Schrader valve stem, steel, 75 grams per tube. They're cheap, $6 to $8 a piece. They're lightweight, they pack down very small, reliable, and you can even color match your bike if you want. Not that anybody would ever see it. TPU tubes, give them a consideration. They may or may not work for you. Your mileage may vary. The upside is there are choices available for every usage and preference that works best for you. I'm Kevin, and I hope you found the information I've presented today to be of interest. Please like, subscribe, and I'd like to encourage you to check out and support me on Patreon at my Aslan's Hope, where I release full recordings, particularly those compositions which you have heard during these videos. Till next time, let's go.